Welcome to Reparenting Radio. I'm Lisa Watson, a transformational coach, author, and cycle breaker, just like you. This podcast is a sacred space for truth-telling, remembrance, and radical healing. Each week, I share stories, spiritual teachings, and nervous system wisdom to help dismantle disempowering beliefs, break generational cycles, and reclaim our sovereignty. So together, we can build a new world rooted in love and freedom for the generations to come. If you're ready to remember who you are beneath the programming, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome back to Reparenting Radio. Today, we're diving into one of my favorite topics. We're going to talk about triggers. Ooh, so excited. Most people see triggers as something to avoid, but what if your trigger is actually your inner child tugging on your sleeve saying, hey, remember me? There's something here that still hurts. What if every emotional reaction, every time you freeze, shut down, get defensive, or feel misunderstood, isn't proof that you're broken, but it's a message from the part of you that's still waiting to be seen, heard, and held? That's what we're going to talk about today. Because until we understand the anatomy of a trigger, we keep reacting to life instead of responding to it. And we're going to keep calling it personality when it's really protection. Years ago, when I began doing this deep inner child work, I started noticing a pattern in myself. Whenever my husband would speak to me in a certain tone, a tone to him that was probably, is just neutral and normal, what he was conditioned to learn how to speak, I would go into absolute freeze mode, full nervous system dysregulation. My whole body would shut down. And it became nearly impossible for me to listen or even think clearly, which is what most of us experience inside a trigger, either that or rage. It's fight, flight, or freeze, right? All of a sudden, I wasn't an adult anymore. I wasn't a woman having a conversation with her partner. I was just a little girl again, small, helpless, and frozen. And I couldn't name it all the time, but what I know now is that I was just being triggered. My husband's tone was a match, and that match was landing on a bomb that I didn't even know was still buried within me. A childhood wound that was whispering, hey, you're in trouble, you're not safe, you're not enough. And that was the moment that I realized that triggers aren't about the other person. They're about what's still living inside of us, waiting for our love and for our attention. The trigger isn't the problem. It's your body's alarm system, your nervous system saying something inside of me doesn't feel safe right now. It's not logical, and it's not even happening in the present moment. It's your subconscious, your inner child reacting to a familiar energetic pattern that once meant danger. The brain doesn't know the difference between emotional and physical threat. So when that old feeling of rejection, abandonment, or shame arises, the amygdala sends a message through your whole body: protect yourself. And that's when fight, flight, freeze, or fawn ensue. You lash out, you shut down, you people please, you disassociate. It's all the same story wearing different costumes. I don't feel safe being me right now. The thing about triggers is that they're rarely proportional to what is actually happening. You might be reacting to a tone, a look, maybe a delay, a word, or someone forgot to text you back. But beneath that moment lives a lifetime of unmet needs. And that's why healing requires compassion. Because when you're triggered, you're not overreacting. You're actually reliving. So the goal isn't to get rid of your triggers. It's to get curious about them. Every trigger is an opportunity to meet the part of you that's still waiting for love. Every time you get reactive, defensive, or you shut down, you're being handed a roadmap that leads directly to your unhealed wounds. It's an absolute gift. But most of us, we spend our lives trying to avoid those moments. We avoid the conversations. We distract ourselves. We blame the other person. We scroll, we eat, we shop, we work, or we argue, anything but feel what's actually going on deep within us. But that discomfort in your body, it isn't punishment. It's guidance. Your trigger is your higher self saying, hey, it's time, it's safe now to look at what's been hiding. I often describe triggers as a descent. It's like going down a ladder or an elevator into the subconscious. In fact, I have a whole trigger toolkit on it that I use with my clients. When you're on the top floor, everything seems fine. You're functioning, you're regulated, and then boom, something small happens. Someone criticizes you, they interrupt you, they forget to thank you. Instantly, you drop down a level. You might say, that's not true, or you always do this. That's the first rung, defensiveness. When you go one level deeper, maybe your stomach tightens or your throat closes. That's the second rung, the body responding to the threat. You keep going, and underneath that is usually a thought, well, if they're right, maybe I'm not good enough. Then another, if I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And under that, at the very bottom, is the root of almost every wound I've ever met in myself or in my clients. If I'm not worthy, then I'm not lovable. And if I'm not lovable, then I'm not safe. That's the voice of the inner child. That's the real reason that we're triggered. Not because of what's happening now, but because that buried version of us still believes it's happening again. But why? Why does this happen? Because your subconscious mind it is your inner child, and to them, there really is no time. Time is an illusion. All we ever really have is the present moment. So when we experience trauma, which at its essence is simply a discomfort from self, the body freezes that moment in place. Dr. Gabor Mate, he says that trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you. And I completely agree with that, because it's the moment your system decided it's not safe to be me. So when something in your present reality resembles that old energetic imprint, the subconscious doesn't recognize that decades, have passed. It believes that you're still there, that you're still small, you're still powerless, you're still not safe to be your authentic self. And what we have to remember about the subconscious mind and the inner child is that the subconscious mind and these beliefs and these triggers are programmed through the perception of your inner child, through the eyes of this being that didn't have the frontal lobe, that wasn't able to logically think about things. So the trigger is happening from that point of view. The reason the inner child doesn't feel safe, why you're going into fight, flight, or freeze, is because from that child's point of view, if you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're not loving, you're not deserving, you're not safe, because that child is wired to know under the age of 8, during this 1 to 7 year of subconscious programming, the inner child's wired to know that it needs that caregiver for its safety. It needs food and shelter and connection in order to survive. And if that parent outside of you makes you feel not lovable and not worthy or deserving, then you aren't safe. So your inner child is literally time-stamped on that timeline, waiting for reconnection. That's why healing work isn't about getting over it. It's about reminding the nervous system that now is not then. So we have to speak to that inner part of us. And we say, this is what I say, hey baby, listen, it's 2025 and we're safe now. Mom and dad, they're not in charge anymore, and I'm here. You have me, the adult version of you who knows how to keep us safe, how to listen, how to love. That simple act of orienting yourself to the present moment recodes the body. It lets the child within know the danger has passed, that you no longer need to hide, perform, or protect yourself in the same way. And that's when integration truly begins, when you can finally let go of the past and the present day you becomes the parent your younger self always needed. I want to stop here. Let's take a moment and just breathe together, okay? If you can. Close your eyes for just a moment, unless you're driving. And just take one slow inhale in through your nose and let it go. And just notice what's alive in your body right now. Maybe you can feel a place that tightens when you think about a recent trigger, a comment, a look, a rejection, a tone. Can you soften there? Can you imagine the part of you who learned to protect yourself that way? How old was that part of you? What was it trying to do? Just breathe with them. You don't need to fix it or figure it out. Just let your inner child know that you're here now. This is what reparenting looks like. It's not about never getting triggered again. It's about becoming the safe parent within the trigger. The moment you realize you're triggered, that's your holy moment. That's your chance to choose something different. When I notice my nervous system is activated now, I name it. I'm triggered. Just that awareness changes the whole game. It pulls me out of the story and into the present. It reminds me, oh, this is my little girl talking. And from there, I breathe and I pause. I might step outside, put my feet on the ground, get some sunshine, place my hand on my heart, on my body. Sometimes I even whisper, I'm safe, I'm loved, and I'm here. And sometimes, in the past, as I've been doing a lot of this work, I used to go to my car and scream. Occasionally I still have to do that. Or I go in my yard and throw something at the ground hard and just release all that tension. That's nervous system regulation. That's self-parenting in real time. And if I can stay with myself long enough, the charge starts to move through instead of staying trapped. The body starts to learn that it's safe to feel again. And that, my friends, is healing, because healing isn't the absence of triggers. It's the presence of safety within them. We have to train ourselves that it's safe to feel and express how we feel. And often it's not pretty and it doesn't feel comfortable. But once you're calm and your nervous system is regulated, that's when the deeper work begins. That's when you ask, when have I felt this before? And this actually may be something that you also can do within the trigger. As you get better at practicing it, you might be able to ask these questions of yourself within the trigger. But you might realize that it isn't about your partner or your boss or your friend or the dog or whatever just triggered you. It's about the parent who didn't see you, the teacher that shamed you, the friend that abandoned you. The moment your body learned it wasn't safe to be fully you. When you find that moment and you can meet it with love, you're going to say, I see you, I hear you, and I'm so sorry you had to carry this alone. You didn't deserve that, but you're safe with me now. And then you just listen. Your inner child might show you an image, a memory, a word, or just even silence, and that's okay. They're learning to trust you again. You're not just healing an emotion, you're rebuilding a relationship with yourself. So once you've regulated, once you've tended to the inner child and you come back into your body, this is when communication becomes sacred instead of reactive. From that grounded space, you can calmly say to the person that was the catalyst to your trigger, when you spoke to me in that tone, it didn't feel kind. Or, I'd like to ask that we talk about this when we're both calmer. You're not lashing out or defending, you're simply responding. And that's the difference between repeating the wound and reclaiming your power. Sometimes it means enforcing a boundary, enacting a boundary. Sometimes it means allowing a natural consequence like stepping away, choosing peace, or just saying no. Not from anger, but from clarity. That's what it looks like to take your power back. I have practiced this with my husband so many times, I can't even tell you how empowering it is. In fact, it's kind of funny. About 2 years ago, I was walking every day, and my husband was going for walks with me. And he had this habit in the morning, maybe because he was just sort of grumpy, but speaking to me in this tone, like an impatient tone, just a very judgmental tone or shaming tone. He'd just like ask a question, or if I asked him a question, he would say, well, don't you remember? Or, well, I already told you. Or, well, you asked me that last week. And one day we had been working on this communication. I had been working on my triggers, but also in the calm times I was working on communicating with him. And one day I just stopped in the middle of our walk and I looked at him and I said, I don't want to walk with you anymore in the morning. I said, I'm going to turn around and go this way. And you can do whatever you want, but I'm not walking with you anymore. And he was a little put off, but he knew, he's known since the day he met me, that I am committed to my emotional regulation, and I am committed to only being around people who speak kindly to me with respect and own their own stuff. So off I went. I went home and I didn't walk with him anymore. And this communication thing is something that we continue to work on. It's just a learned behavior from him, from his childhood and the way he learned how to communicate. And it wasn't about him. It was about me taking my power back. And I was perfectly fine with walking alone. That was a natural consequence of him not being able to be kind to me. Well, this week I invited him back on a walk with me, and we've gone for a walk together 3 times in the early morning, watching the sunrise and doing a little sprinting together up some hills. And it has been quite beautiful and quite pleasant. And the boundaries that I set, the natural consequences that I enacted, the continued calm conversations that we've had over the past couple years about it are what changed things. And now I'm in a beautiful place with him. And that is the gift of triggers. That's what it looks like to take your power back, to honor both your emotions and your energy, to respond instead of react. And that's where healing begins to ripple outward into your relationships. One of the most powerful parts of my healing came when I stopped taking my triggers so personally. In fact, my husband and I, we reached a point a while back where I would get triggered by him, and then he would say, "You're welcome." And we would both laugh because we knew what that meant. He wasn't mocking me, and he was acknowledging that he just held up a mirror to something that needed my love. And he knew that it was probably going to come with a conversation later and natural consequences and some work on his part too. But the laughter made it safe to look at. Healing doesn't have to be heavy. Sometimes humor is what cracks the shell of shame wide open. When you can say, wow, there I go again, getting hijacked by my 7-year-old self with compassion instead of judgment, then you've already shifted. Because you're no longer in the story, you're witnessing it. You're reparenting in real time. We live in a world that normalizes dysregulation. We call chaos passion, we call numbness strength, we call avoidance peace. But true peace comes from being able to sit with your discomfort without abandoning yourself. It's being able to feel without falling apart, to stay connected to your breath, your body, and your truth, even when old programming tries to pull you back into fear. When you heal your triggers, you don't just change your reactions, you change your frequency. You shift what you attract, what you tolerate, and what you believe is possible. And the most beautiful part, your relationship starts to heal too. Because once you stop making others responsible for your emotional state, you become magnetic. You radiate safety, and people feel that. You stop reenacting old wounds and you start relating from your wholeness instead of your hurt. That's the magic of reparenting. It's not self-improvement, it's self-return. So the next time that you feel that wave of emotion rise up, the heat, the defensiveness, the urge to run or fix or prove or freeze, put a hand on your heart and whisper to yourself, this isn't about them, this is about me. Then breathe. Invite that younger version of you forward and ask, what is it do you need from me? And then just listen. Maybe they need to cry. Maybe they need to scream or stomp their feet. Maybe they just need to be reminded that they're not alone anymore and that you are there to keep them safe. Your job isn't to fix your inner child, it's to stay with them and make them feel safe. That's the reparenting work. That's what it means to become the safe, loving present your inner child never had. When we do that, when we stop running from our triggers and start using them as portals, life begins to change. The same situations stop having the same power over you. The nervous system recalibrates. The energy that was trapped in fear begins to move as love again. It starts to flow. And then you realize that that tone, that comment, that silence that used to wreck you, it just doesn't anymore. Not because it changed, but because you changed. You became the parent you always needed, and your inner child realized that they are safe. You became the one who could hold it for them. The trigger, the tenderness, the truth. So if you're in a season of being triggered, good. You're closer to your freedom than you think. Because every trigger is your soul's way of saying, you're ready now. You're ready to feel. You're ready to heal. You're ready to remember who you really are beneath the program. To close things out, I would like to read you something from Thich Nhat Hanh. It's very fitting for this episode. It comes from this book, Your True Home, page 157. Picture a tree in a storm. At the top of the tree, the small branches and leaves are swaying violently in the wind. The tree looks vulnerable, quite fragile. It seems it can break at any time. But if you look at the trunk, you will see that the tree is solid. And if you look down to its root structure, you will know that the tree is deeply and firmly rooted in the soil. The tree is quite strong. It can resist the storm. We are also a kind of tree. Our trunk, our center, is just below our navel. The zones of our thinking and our emotions are at the levels of our head and chest. When we are taken hold of by a strong emotion, like despair, fear, anger, or jealousy, we should do our best to leave the zone of the storm and go down to the valley to practice breathing in and out. If we stay in the winds of the storm, it may be too dangerous. We can go for refuge into the trunk, breathing in and out, aware of the rising and the falling of our abdomen. Beautiful, huh? And with that, I want to remind you all, and those who don't know, I wrote a book called Courage Finds Its Calm. And it is exactly about that. It's to help children learn to connect with themselves and their breath when they become dysregulated. And it gives parents a tool and the same knowledge as well that they can teach and develop with their child. If you haven't checked it out, check out my book, Courage Finds Its Calm. You can find it anywhere books are sold. Thank you for joining me today on Reparenting Radio. If this episode spoke to you, take a moment before you move on, close your eyes, breathe, and send love to the parts of you that are learning to trust safety again. Because that's where all true healing begins. In the quiet moment when you choose to stay, feel, and validate yourself. Joining this episode of Reparenting Radio. If it sparks something in you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow cycle breaker. If you want to go deeper, visit my website at reparent-yourself.com for healing tools and programs, and be sure to explore my soul-nourishing children's books at awakentheone.org. Until next time, stay sovereign, speak your truth, and keep reparenting your way home to yourself.